Good evening, I'm James Izimoha and you're watching A News. Here are top stories for tonight. US President Donald Trump marks his first 100 days in office. Mark Carney's Liberals win the Canadian election to seal a remarkable comeback. Power gradually restored in Spain and Portugal after major blackout. "100 days into his second term, Donald Trump has reasserted his presidency with a mix of bold moves, global disruption, and domestic crackdowns. He's reshaping both America's priorities and its place in the world."
Honorable Donald John Trump.
From border crackdowns to backroom diplomacy, Trump's return to the White House has been anything but quiet. In just 100 days, he's reignited old battles, sparked new ones, and pushed Washington and the world into uncharted territory.
Solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
That I will faithfully.
From the moment Donald Trump stepped back into the Oval Office in January 2025, he wasted no time reigniting one of his signature priorities: immigration. On day one, Trump declared a national emergency at the southern border, deploying US forces to assist with enforcement. He also ordered the expansion of Guantanamo Bay's migrant facility, increasing its capacity to hold up to 30,000 high-priority detainees. The message was clear. Immigration enforcement was back at the top of the agenda, and it would be stricter, faster, and more militarized than ever before. Even before his second term began, Trump signaled that his foreign policy would revolve around conflict resolution, or at least his version of it. US President floated ideas like renaming geographical landmarks, the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America, and even suggested that Greenland could be brought closer under US administration, also jokingly referred to Canada as the 51st state. His early moves focused on bringing an end to the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. But those peace efforts quickly stirred controversy. In the Middle East, his suggestion to take control of the Gaza Strip has sparked heated debate. Trump proposed permanently displacing Palestinians from Gaza, stating that people there had no choice but to leave the area devastated by Israel's military assault.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site, and get rid of the destroyed buildings.
Trump's dramatic Oval Office exchange with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, captured on camera, became a viral moment.
You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Trump's softened stance toward Russia raised eyebrows after he revived direct talks with Moscow, including dispatching ally Stephen Witkoff and holding back-channel meetings in Saudi Arabia. The backlash intensified when Trump struck a strategic mineral deal with Kyiv, bypassing NATO and the EU. The diplomatic rift between the US and the EU deepened, and so did tensions inside NATO. But Trump dismissed the criticism, reviving an old narrative that NATO allies had long cheated the US by failing to meet their military spending commitments. That tension quickly turned economic. In what many saw as retaliation, Trump imposed a sweeping 20% tariff on key European exports, a move that shook global markets. A sweeping series of trade penalties targeted both allies and rivals. Trump's core argument was that years of one-sided trade deals had hollowed out American industry and empowered foreign economies at US expense.
Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen. In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal, that means they do it to us and we do it to them. Very simple, can't get any simpler than that.
The rollout began with a 20% blanket tariff on a range of imported goods, from steel and machinery to cars, electronics, and agricultural products. Countries around the world were caught off guard. Some, like China, quickly responded with retaliatory tariffs on American goods. The tariff announcement sent shockwaves through global financial markets. Investor confidence dropped sharply, triggering widespread sell-offs and a spike in volatility. Trump made it clear, countries willing to renegotiate and offer more favorable terms to the US could earn relief. The UK and Israel were among the first to sign fast-track agreements, securing reduced tariff brackets in exchange for defense and tech cooperation. At home, Trump mirrored his foreign hardline with domestic crackdowns. Following pro-Gaza campus protests, he ordered mass arrests and targeted elite schools like Harvard, accusing them of spreading anti-American ideology. Funding was slashed for universities that didn't adopt new patriotic standards. The crackdown fit into a broader overhaul. On day one, Trump launched the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, led by Elon Musk, to cut federal waste. One of its first targets was USAID, which saw deep funding cuts. Foreign aid was scaled back, limited only to allies deemed to provide direct value to American taxpayers.
America is back.
Behind the scenes, Trump's White House has been anything but unified. The first 100 days have seen sharp internal disagreements, particularly over tariffs and the Ukraine policy. Mixed messages from senior officials have only added to the confusion. High-profile resignations, especially at the Pentagon, have raised alarms about the administration's internal stability. Former defense officials cited conflicting directives and uncoordinated strategy as key reasons for stepping down.
It's impossible for us.
As Trump's second term charges ahead, one thing is certain: he's not slowing down. With sharp policies, sweeping reforms, and constant controversy, his first 100 days have reset the tone in Washington, and the world is still catching up.
In a dramatic political shift, Mark Carney has been declared the next Prime Minister of Canada, leading the Liberal Party to a decisive victory in the 2025 federal elections. With a firm stance on Canadian sovereignty, Carney's leadership promises to steer the country toward a new chapter in its foreign and economic policies.
Mark Carney, a former governor of both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, secured 168 seats, just shy of a majority, but enough to form a stable government. He replaces long-serving Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, whose departure from politics earlier this year opened the door for Carney's swift rise. In his victory speech, Carney struck a firm tone on Canadian sovereignty. He went on to criticize Trump's protectionist trade policies and called for a new era of Canadian independence in foreign and economic policy. He directly addressed tensions with US President Donald Trump and said that Canada will never be owned by America.
Our old relationship with the United States, a relationship based on steadily increasing integration, is over. The system of open global trade, anchored by the United States, a system that Canada has relied on since the Second World War, a system that, while not perfect, has helped deliver prosperity for a country for decades, is over. These are tragedies, but it's also our new reality. We are over the shock of the American betrayal, but we should never forget the lessons.
But you're going to take us forward.
We have to look out for ourselves.
The election results come amid growing trade friction between the two countries, with Canada hit hard by recent US tariffs on aluminum, timber, and agricultural products. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre suffered a major personal defeat, losing his parliamentary seat. Despite the loss, the Conservatives increased their overall seat count to 144. Smaller parties, including the NDP and the Bloc Québécois, saw significant losses. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh announced his resignation shortly after the results were confirmed. World leaders have welcomed Mark Carney's election win with praise and high expectations. The European Union vowed to deepen ties, calling Carney a partner in defending democracy and free trade. US President Donald Trump has yet to issue a statement on the Liberal victory, which is widely viewed to have been driven by his actions and controversial statements. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer praised Carney's economic expertise, while officials in Beijing remained cautious, noting Canada's potential shift away from US-aligned trade frameworks. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky thanked Canada for steadfast support. NATO's Mark Rutte emphasized defense cooperation, as did leaders in the Netherlands and Australia. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi voiced hope for better ties despite recent tensions.
I cannot believe you're doing this.
Mark Carney now begins the task of forming a government, engaging with independents and smaller parties, while outlining Canada's role amid a shifting global landscape marked by division and geopolitical change.
Russia has rejected Ukraine's earlier proposal to extend the brief ceasefire to 30 days. That's according to Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. He said a longer ceasefire would be difficult unless key issues are resolved. Earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called Russia's three-day truce from May 8th to 10th a manipulation and asked why Moscow wouldn't agree to a longer pause. Peskov responded by accusing Ukraine of manipulation for not clearly responding to what he called a gesture of goodwill. And joining us live from Kyiv, Ukraine, Professor of Politics at Kyiv University, Professor Oleksiy Heran. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
President Putin has proposed a temporary ceasefire around Victory Day. From your perspective, is this a genuine diplomatic gesture or perhaps a strategic move to present himself to the leaders and delegates attending the event as a peacemaker?
This is just a camouflage. Here I would quote Mr. Kellogg, who is special representative on Trump, of Trump on Ukraine. And we know, very contradictory statements made by Trump and his team. But regarding General Kellogg, so he called what Putin said as absurd, really absurd. Because now Putin is talking about 3 days in May, which will be 10 days from now, but Putin refuses to stick to ceasefire right now. And basically what he is doing, he continues to kill Ukrainians, continues to kill civilian Ukraine. That's what he is, but he refuses to have a ceasefire, sorry. So just to declare ceasefire for 3 days is nothing, He doesn't show a will to stop the war.
Ukraine's government has said it's ready for a full ceasefire, but only if Russia halts attacks. What would be the conditions for Ukraine to consider entering serious negotiations at this stage?
Well, first of all, look, again, this was Trump's proposal. So he said, okay, I mediate between Ukraine and Russia. And he said, okay, we need to have a full ceasefire. Ukraine agreed. And what Putin said? Putin said no. Okay, so this is an explanation what we can do. We are ready for full ceasefire. Putin is not, unfortunately. So all these talks about future negotiation are becoming meaningless if Putin doesn't want a ceasefire. Because what Putin is suggesting, he is suggesting, okay, let's have negotiations. But in the meantime, I will continue the war on Ukraine and I will continue the killings of Ukrainians, civilian Ukrainians. Look, I will give you my personal story. Just 3 days ago, there was a bombardment of Kiev, and the building, which is 300 meters from my daughter's house, was totally destroyed by a Russian missile. So the roof in the building of my daughter was also destroyed. So I'm talking, and there are many, many Ukrainians who are in worse situation because their relatives are killed. So Putin continues what he is doing, the killings of Ukrainians, and this missile attack. So we think it's important to put the pressure on Putin to have a ceasefire, real ceasefire, and then there would be negotiations. That's logical.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Professor Haran. Spain and Portugal have restored power after the worst blackout in their history, but the cause remains a mystery. Authorities say investigations are underway as questions grow over the resilience of Europe's energy systems.
Spain and Portugal switched their power back on after a massive blackout paralysed transportation, communications and daily life across the Iberian Peninsula. Authorities still have no clear explanation for what triggered the outage, which wiped out 60% of Spain's power demand in just 5 seconds. On Tuesday, traffic lights, metro services and schools gradually reopened, but disruptions to trains and airports persisted. Spanish troops were deployed to rescue commuters stranded overnight, while Red Cross teams distributed blankets and water.
It was of unprecedented magnitude, so obviously we will be looking into the lessons learned and, if necessary, take the necessary action.
European officials emphasise that it will take time to fully assess the incident. Despite early fears, Spain's electricity grid operator ruled out a cyber attack.
We are still not aware of the cause of the blackout, and obviously it's necessary to learn the right lessons. So we will try to prevent these situations, and we will try to take measures how to prevent such situations in the future.
For vulnerable individuals, the blackout was especially dangerous. José María Casay, a 72-year-old patient dependent on an oxygen concentrator, described his fear during the outage.
I can't breathe properly. I depend on electricity. That's why it's called electro-dependent.
In Barcelona, business owners struggled with chaos and spoilage of perishable goods.
Surely we will have losses because everything is in the fridge, and if the produce isn't in the fridge, it gets ruined.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez stressed that neither a surge in renewable energy nor a cyber attack caused the collapse.
There was no problem of excess renewables, just as there was no problem of lack of coverage of unsatisfied demand.
Sánchez vowed that results of the ongoing investigations will be used to strengthen the system to prevent future failures.
The results of all these investigations will be used to strengthen our electricity system, because it is clear that what happened yesterday cannot happen again.
Portugal's Prime Minister Luís Montenegro also blamed Spain for the initial fault, while life in Lisbon gradually returned to normal. Experts warn it could take weeks to fully understand what led to the blackout, as both countries remain under states of emergency, determined to avoid another such crisis.
Now joining us is Pedro Sampaio Nunes, energy expert from Lisbon. Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
What is the situation with the electric supply in Lisbon now? Are there any indications to the root causes of the blackout in Spain and Portugal?
Not yet. For the time being, power was restored. I think that today almost in all the grid. But this has the worst blackout in the last 23 years in Europe. The last one, it was in Italy, in 2003. but it had a lot of impact on the lives of the normal citizens and also in the critical installations. So I think this is a big opportunity to learn from mistakes and to first understand what happened. This is something that is not yet clear. I saw that the Prime Minister from Spain was jumping in conclusions that it was not due to an injection of renewables. My information from the technical experts say that this could be a cause, too much solar injection, 15 gigawatts, that the grid could not handle, and that initiate a collapse in domino of the entire grid. So I hope that we will learn from this. What is absolutely sure, it is that when we inject a large percentage of renewables that are intermittent, you lose a lot of security in the grid that is given by the inertia of the big power plants that are rotative.
How vulnerable is the region's energy infrastructure to similar disruptions in the future?
I think the more we grow with renewables, the more vulnerable they will become. Because when we lose the power plants that are the conventional ones with these large turbines that gives this inertia to the system that can absorb fluctuations of the frequency, we enter in a more dangerous situation. There is the possibility of investing in some means with electronic that could replace partially this inertia, but we are still on an experimental field. What we have seen in Germany, in California, in Texas, in Australia, are not very good examples. So I think that we are obliged now to stop and think a little bit about the energy policy that the European Commission is proposing.
Thank you, Mr. Nunes. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni met in Rome to strengthen cooperation between the two nations. The meeting focused on defense and economic ties.
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni welcomed Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan with a ceremony at the Villa Pamphili residence in Rome, ahead of high-level talks aimed at strengthening bilateral cooperation. The two leaders then held a one-on-one meeting before attending the fourth intergovernmental summit between Turkey and Italy, focused on enhancing strategic ties and addressing key regional and global issues, including the war in Ukraine and developments in the Middle East. A central component of the summit is a business forum bringing together over 500 Turkish and Italian entrepreneurs, reflecting the growing momentum in trade and defence cooperation. Bilateral trade between the two countries rose sharply from $10 billion in 2019 to $32.2 billion in 2024, making Italy Turkey's second largest commercial partner in Europe. Italy is also a major investor in Turkey, with over 1,600 Italian-owned companies operating in the country and total investments reaching $5 billion. Turkish businesses are increasingly visible in Italy as well, particularly in sectors such as textiles, food and automotive components. The leaders have previously met in multilateral settings such as the United Nations and NATO summits, discussing key geopolitical issues, including Ukraine, Syria's reintegration and defence ties. Defence collaboration has become a growing focus, especially as the Russia-Ukraine war has driven demand in the arms industry. In March, Italian defence giant Leonardo and Turkish drone producer Baykar agreed to jointly develop unmanned aerial systems. In addition to security and economic cooperation, there are also joint initiatives in transport, infrastructure, space and sport. Turkey and Italy are set to co-host the Euro 2032 football tournament.
A high-level defense meeting between Turkey and the United States has taken place in Ankara. Leading the talks were Major General İlkay Altıntaş, Director General for Defense and Security at Turkey's Ministry of Defense, and Catherine Thompson, Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs. Discussions covered defense and defense industry, regional and global security threats, and strategic partnerships. Major General Altıntaş noted that the next meeting will be held in the United States next year. Leaders and lawmakers from across NATO member states and partner countries are gathered in Turkey this week for a key seminar on security and economic challenges facing the Gulf, the Middle East, and the Sahel. The event, organized by the NATO Parliamentary Assembly's Mediterranean and Middle East Special Group, officially opened Monday in Antalya's Belek Tourism Center.
The NATO Parliamentary Assembly Mediterranean and Middle East Special Group's Economic and Security Commission seminar officially commenced Monday in Antalya's Belek Tourism Center. The three-day seminar brings together representatives from NATO countries, Azerbaijan, Gulf nations, and Arab states to assess regional developments and their broader impact on NATO's security framework. Speaking to reporters, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, chairman of the Turkish delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly and former foreign minister, stressed Turkey's growing influence on the global stage.
Turkey has become an extremely important country in diplomacy and security, especially amid the rapid changes globally. Turkey remains an indispensable NATO ally and one of the top contributors. It is very important that the Western world has recently begun to understand Turkey's significance. But Turkey's importance should not only be acknowledged when needed, it should not be forgotten after the need disappears.
Çavuşoğlu criticized the Western partners for what he described as periodic neglect of Turkey's role after phases of close cooperation. He also cautioned against exclusionary approaches when discussing the future of Europe's security architecture. Highlighting Turkey's ongoing diplomatic efforts, Çavuşoğlu announced that next month Turkey will host a NATO foreign ministers meeting in Istanbul, chaired by Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, following high-profile events like the Antalya Diplomacy Forum.
Tbilisi is stepping deeper into regional diplomacy. Georgian President Mikhail Kavalishvili is in Yerevan, the next stop on a fast-paced South Caucasus tour. Following key talks in Baku and a landmark trilateral meeting in Tbilisi, Kavalishvili now meets with Armenian President Vahan Khachaturian, adding fresh momentum to Georgia's push for peace and partnership in the region.
Georgian President Mikhail Kavalishvili's visit to Armenia continues, with the meeting with Armenian President Vahan Khachaturian being one of the key moments. During the press conference, Armenian President welcomed Georgia's efforts aimed at fostering security and stability in the South Caucasus and noted that Yerevan appreciates Tbilisi's effort in assisting peace progress between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Meanwhile, Kavalishvili highlighted Georgia's growing role in stabilizing South Caucasus, referencing the April 17th trilateral meeting in Tbilisi as the start of the new format for regional dialogue between Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. With respect to bilateral relations, the head of Georgian state underscored that relations between Yerevan and Tbilisi continue improving, and noting that Armenia remains an important trade partner for Georgia. Kavalishvili added that his meeting with Armenian president comes after his visit to Baku and above-mentioned trilateral meeting in Tbilisi, indicating Georgia's important role on promoting dialogue in the South Caucasus while fostering strong relations with its neighbors. It's Nini Nikolaishvili, reporting from Tbilisi, News.
President of Georgia Mikhail Kavalishvili met with Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan in Yerevan, reaffirming support for South Caucasus peace efforts. Kavalishvili hailed the conclusion of negotiations on the peace deal text between Baku and Yerevan as a historic step. He also underscored the importance of ongoing trilateral cooperation following a recent meeting of the Georgian, Armenian and Azerbaijani foreign ministers in Tbilisi. Kavalyashvili said Georgia remains committed to advancing dialogue and supporting efforts that boost regional stability and shared prosperity. Afghanistan's acting foreign minister met with Qatar's top leadership in Doha to discuss bilateral relations, regional developments, and Qatar's continued support for the Afghan people.
During the visit, the acting Afghan Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi held talks with Qatar's Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani. The two sides focused on strengthening diplomatic ties, enhancing trade, and addressing current developments in the region. According to the Afghan Foreign Ministry, both parties emphasized the importance of deepening cooperation. The Qatari Foreign Minister described relations with Afghanistan as close and brotherly, and welcomed Afghanistan's improved engagement with the region. He also underlined the need for stronger economic links, particularly through greater interaction between the private sectors of both nations. Muttaqi, for his part, thanked Qatar for its invitation and acknowledged its vital role in Afghanistan's foreign policy. He also called for Qatari investment in Afghanistan's development and commercial sectors, proposing new efforts to boost bilateral trade. Qatar has long played a central role in Afghan diplomacy. It hosted Taliban leaders during the US-led war and served as a venue for the 2020 peace agreement between the United States and the Taliban. In recent years, Doha has also hosted several rounds of talks between Afghanistan's de facto authorities and the international community. Most notably, the UN-chaired Doha talks aimed at addressing Afghanistan's political, economic, and humanitarian challenges. Despite these close diplomatic ties, trade between Afghanistan and Qatar remains limited. In 2023, Qatar's import from Afghanistan totaled just over $1.17 million, according to United Nations Comtrade database. As Afghanistan seeks deeper regional engagement, Qatar continues to serve as a key diplomatic and economic partner. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for A News.
A major international conference on Afghanistan has concluded in Baku, where representatives from 20 countries discussed regional security and development. The conference aims to support Afghanistan's path to long-term stability.
In Baku, officials from 20 countries gathered for the Afghanistan Regional Connectivity, Security and Development Conference, organized by Azerbaijan's State Security Service to discuss Afghanistan's future. Colonel General Ali Nagiev opened the conference, stressing its importance in building a stable, law-abiding Afghanistan. He highlighted Azerbaijan's long-standing support for international efforts to stabilize the country and combat terrorism and organized crime. The conference also underscored the need for global cooperation in addressing Afghanistan's challenges, from terrorism to illegal migration. The representatives shared a unified vision: Afghanistan's peaceful integration into the international community and the importance of joint efforts in promoting long-term stability.
Non-governmental organizations from Global South countries came together at an international forum held in Baku. The event featured panel discussions on key issues such as just development, climate change, and youth participation. The forum has also become an important platform for international cooperation for Azerbaijan.
The second day of the Empowering Global South NGOs Forum in Baku focused on the panel, The Rise of the Global South. Experts discussed NGOs' role in development, addressing local issues, and fighting injustice. Topics included poverty, climate change, colonial legacy, and digital inequality. The forum emphasized financial sustainability, transparency, and removing barriers for youth participation, while human rights defenders called for amplifying vulnerable groups' voices.
I think this platform is the first action. So we create the platform here. We cannot stop here. So we need to go far away. Why not to come to Chad? Why not to come to other countries also can work together? So this is the message of Baku. So we need to share with our people back in Chad. So this is the only opportunity that we receive here in Baku, and we share the same view of things, because nowadays our world is different. If you need to work together, I think that, as we say in Chad, one hand cannot clap, but if you are together, you can clap it, yes. That's a message of Baku.
The event being held here in Baku for the first time, it's a historic event, and I believe that Baku is a very strategic place because the initiative was born in here, and for the first time in here it's going to be distributed to other parties in the world, and this is going to reinforce the status of Azerbaijan and especially the NGO, the Global South NGO platform in the globe, around the globe.
The panel No More Double Standards, NGOs as Catalysts, addressed climate, human rights and social justice, stressing the need for Global South countries to amplify their voices on international platforms. The forum served as a bridge for dialogue between the Global South and North, with representatives from Africa and Asia advocating for stronger local solutions.
What you see from the international participants across the 5 continents is that the people, they feel like they own it. It's them now. It's not like the North giving them money to buy them. Now they feel that even though Azerbaijan is a rich country, capitalist country, but it's behaving like a brother. That's what everyone feels. Cuba, Latin America, Africa, wherever.
A separate panel on D8 cooperation highlighted Azerbaijan's historic accession, emphasizing its growing international reputation and leadership in the Islamic world. The forum focused on principles of peace, justice, equality, cooperation, and addressing climate change and poverty.
The agency signed memorandums of understanding with NGOs from China and Uzbekistan, while other Azerbaijani non-governmental organizations signed similar agreements with 7 foreign NGOs. The agency will continue strengthening ties with Global South non-governmental organizations. Supporting the initiatives and ideas of NGOs operating in the Global South will be among the main priorities in upcoming grant competitions.
Several memorandums of cooperation were signed between the Azerbaijan Agency for State Support to NGOs and various international NGOs at the Global South NGO Platform Founding Forum. The agreements focus on areas such as disability rights, renewable energy, women's empowerment, and children's rights. The forum aimed to strengthen international cooperation and NGO connections, with participation from hundreds of leaders across 116 countries, representing 80% of the world's population.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.